On February 17, 1902, the first Cadillac automobile was produced in Detroit. The car could reach a top speed of about 48 kilometers per hour and cost $750. For an extra fee, you could get 2 additional passenger seats and a folding soft top. I decided to recall all the first models of the most famous brands. In every person's life, the first uncertain step is always the most important one. It's exactly the same story with cars. Without the first simple, straightforward licensed BMW, there would never have been the futuristic i8. And if Enzo Ferrari hadn't dared to build the 125S Speedster, there would have been no F40, no LaFerrari. And without the first Fiat, we might still be walking everywhere. Let's take a look back at the very first cars in the history of today's biggest brands. You're watching Black Panda, and these are the very first cars in the history of the biggest brands. Part 1. Let's get started. So, the first car on our list is the Alfa Romeo from the year 1910. As you know, the name of the famous Milanese brand is actually half an abbreviation. Originally, ALFA stood for Anonimo Lombarda Fabbrica Automobili. So, it's something like, a car from Lombardy. The second half of the name came from the entrepreneur Nicola Romeo, who bought Alfa in 1915. The first car of the Alfa brand, the 24 HP model, was equipped with an inline 4-cylinder engine with a displacement of 2.4 liters and, fittingly, a power output of 24 horsepower. Later, a 4-liter engine was installed in this car, and the speed of such an Alfa approached 100 kilometers per hour. Not too bad, wouldn't you agree? For the beginning of the 20th century. The next car is the Aston Martin Coal-Settle from 1914. Unlike Rolls-Royce, only part of this British brand's name is the founder's surname. And it's only the second part. In 1913, successful London car dealer Lionel Martin won the hill climb at Aston Clinton. And in his excitement, he came up with a name for the future models, which at that time only existed as company projects, Aston Martin, combining the name of the race with his own surname. Brender's first car was an Isotta Fraschini chassis with a 1.4-liter Coventry Simplex engine. Rayner very creatively named his car Coal-Settle. But then the war began, and laughter, racing, and the production of new cars all had to be put on hold for a full 4 years. The next car, my dear friends, is the 1910 Audi Type A. When August Horch had a big falling out with the board of directors of his own company, Horch, because they thought car racing was a waste of time and energy, while August was convinced that motorsport was synonymous with the word progress. He slammed the door and started a new company. In Latin, the word Audi means about the same thing as Horch does in German, the verb to listen. The first production car of the new company was the Audi Type A, with a 2.6-liter, 22-horsepower engine. Technically, the car was in many ways similar to the Horch 1822, but no one made a scandal out of it.
Bentley 3-liter, the year 1919.
This is the first British car whose name referred to the engine's displacement, not its power. This is the Bentley 3-liter, created by one Walter Bentley and his friend Frank Bridges, a former racing driver and designer for Humber. At first, Bentley Motors, which was based in London, offered its customers only the chassis without the body. Moreover, with a price of over £1,000, the 3-liter Bentley was considered one of the most expensive cars on the market. The model was offered in 3 versions: Blue Label, the standard Red Label, a tuned version with the compression ratio increased to 5.3 to 1, and Green Label, a shortened chassis and the most powerful engine, which, believe it or not, could already guarantee 160 kilometers per hour back then. That's
Nice.
awesome.
And this is the BMW 315 DA1 from 1929.
After World War I, a well-known aircraft engine manufacturer was forced to look for new uses for its production capacity. For a while, BMW even produced kitchen furniture and then switched to motorcycles. In 1928, it bought the Dixie Company, which assembled licensed Austin 7s. So the first BMW car was a legal copy of the British compact car. The complicated index of the original BMW 315 DA1 is actually quite simple to decipher. The first number is the taxable horsepower, and the second number is the actual horsepower. The letters DA are an abbreviation of the German Deutsche Ausführung. This translates as, well, something like made in Germany. And the next car is the Bugatti Type 13 from the year 1910. Ettore Bugatti built his first vehicle, a quadricycle with 4 engines, back in 1899. But the first car to be adorned with the famous oval Bugatti emblem was the Type 13. The assembly of the model was set up in the workshops of the former dye house. Well, at least at that time, it was owned by the Malsev family, which had become home to the Italian Engineers Company. By the start of World War I, only 4 units of this very light, just 300 kilogram, 30 horsepower model had been built. True fame patiently awaited Ettore and his creation only a few years later.
Cadillac Model A Runabout, 1902.
The first passenger Cadillac looked very similar to the first passenger Ford. In fact, these companies have more in common than you might think. Actually, Cadillac cars started being produced at the Henry Ford Company factory. And for a while, it was run by none other than Henry Ford himself until he was ousted by the investors. Henry Leland was appointed as the new technical director of the company. The company was renamed Cadillac Automobile Company. The first car of the future premium brand was built on designs left behind by Henry Ford. Chevrolet Classic 6, the year 1911, misunderstanding. That's what happened in the relationship between the brand's founders, William Durant and Louis Chevrolet. The first, a shrewd businessman, daring entrepreneur, and decisive strategist, invited the second, a famous race car driver and engineer, with the goal of building an affordable and popular car. But Chevrolet, obsessed with speed rather than dollars, created an expensive and powerful car, the Classic 6 model with a 6-cylinder engine and a price tag comparable to a Cadillac. But when Durant insisted on producing more affordable cars, Chevrolet, offended by the very idea that his name would be used on some cheap mass-market product, slammed the door and left.
Chrysler B70, 1924 to 25.
In the early 1920s, former Buick president and successful crisis manager of Willis and Maxwell, Walter Chrysler, discovered an empty niche in the market. He wanted to create a powerful and prestigious car that could also be produced in large quantities, which in turn would allow the price to be attractive. And that's how the Chrysler B70 was born. Beautiful and affordable, with a 3.3-liter inline-6 engine producing 68 horsepower and hydraulic brakes on all wheels. And in its very first year, Chrysler managed to sell over 30,000 of the 70s. A new star had risen on the Detroit horizon. The 10th car is the Citroën from 1919. The recently ended First World War deprived the major French industrialist André Citroën, who had made his fortune on military contracts, of his main source of income. So, instead of producing shells, he decided to manufacture cars, simple, reliable, and affordable. The Citroën Type 8, created by engineers Jules Hilleman and Edmond Moyer. It was equipped with a 17 horsepower 1.3-liter engine and could reach speeds of up to 65 kilometers per hour. The car cost no more than 7,000 francs, about half the usual price of cars at that time. No wonder that within 2 months, Citroën received over 16,000 orders and soon earned a reputation as the French Henry Ford.
The legendary Ferrari 125S from 1947.
Enzo Ferrari loved racing and race cars more than anything else in the world, and it's unlikely he would have ever decided to produce regular passenger cars. But necessity forced his hand. He had to cover the expenses of maintaining the Scuderia, so Enzo decided to make cars for sale. In any case, they had to be sporty, hybrid cars. The first car that can be called a true Ferrari was the 2-seater 125S, designed by Gioacchino Colombo. The 12-cylinder, 1.5-liter engine produced 118 horsepower, which, with a weight of 650 kilograms, allowed it to accelerate up to 170 kilometers per hour. In its first 6 months, the new Ferrari competed in 14 races and won 6 of them. And in Maranello, a steady stream of wealthy clients began to arrive. Fiat 3.5 HP from 1899. The Italian car factory from Turin, or simply Fiat, was founded on July 11, 1899. Toward the end of the year, the brand's first car saw the light of day. The Fiat 3.5 HP, with a 2-cylinder 600 cubic centimeter engine, produced 4 horsepower, was equipped with a 3-speed gearbox that didn't have reverse, and came with a standard body crafted by, the carriage maker Marcello Alessio. and the maximum speed of the first car was 35 kilometers per hour. The next car is a Ford Model A from 1903. A dentist from Chicago, Ernst Finnick, made history by becoming the first buyer of a Ford automobile. On July 15, 1903, the successful dentist purchased a Ford runabout with an optional folding top. The purchase cost Mr. Finnick $850. The Ford Model A itself, as I mentioned before, looked a lot like the Cadillac Model A, but the only difference was the engine. The Ford was equipped with a two-cylinder engine, while the Cadillac made do with a single-cylinder motor. That's probably why the Ford cost $100 more. Honda T360, 1963. This cute little truck is considered the first four-wheeled Honda. Although in spirit, this charming pickup was more reminiscent of a sports motorcycle. What would you say, for example, about a tachometer marked up to 14,000 revolutions per minute? In reality, the 356 cubic centimeters four-cylinder twin-cam engine revved a little less than that, but only just a little. The Honda reached its maximum of 30 horsepower at 9,000 revolutions per minute and could accelerate up to 62 kilometers per hour. Another rarity for these vehicles was a 5-speed gearbox. The next car is the 1989 Infiniti Q45. The very first car in this Japanese premium brand's history was essentially a slightly modified version of the Nissan President with the JHJ50 body. Under the hood, a V8 engine, 280 horsepower, automatic transmission, leather interior, and so on. But unlike the competing Lexus LS, which took off right from the start, buyers reacted much more calmly, way more calmly, to the prestigious Infiniti sedan.
Jaguar, or SS Jaguar, from 1931.
One can only envy the foresight of Sir William Lyons. In the early 30s, the founder of the sidecar Swallow Company, also known by the abbreviated name SS, just in case, patented the word Jaguar as a trademark. At first, Jaguars referred to a series of sidecar Swallow models, sedans, coupes, and roadsters. But after the war, when the abbreviation SS acquired some unpleasant associations, sidecar Swallow became Jaguar. Jeep CJ2, year 1945. Americans themselves prefer to start counting Jeep's history from 1941. That's when the multipurpose military off-road vehicle Willys MA went into production, better known to the world by the nickname Jeep. However, the word was first used as the official name of the all-terrain vehicle only in 1945. The version of the military vehicle intended for civilian sale was named Willys CJ2, with the letter CJ actually standing for Civilian Jeep. Otherwise, the differences from the wartime hero were minimal, the same 2.2-liter engine, 3-speed gearbox, and the familiar body shape. The only new things were the radiator grille and a whole lot of colors that were much more cheerful than khaki. The last car on our list today is the Lamborghini 350 GT from 1964. After arguing with Enzo Ferrari himself about the quality of sports cars, Ferruccio Lamborghini decided to prove that he was worth something too. And he did. He hired a whole bunch of renowned engineers and designers whose services cost him a fortune. On his very first try, Ferruccio achieved a solid result. The Lamborghini 350 GT turned out to be both beautiful and powerful, and not too temperamental. Its 12-cylinder, 280 horsepower engine allowed the car to accelerate to an impressive 250 kilometers per hour. That's all from me for now, my dear friends. I hope you enjoyed the first part about the very first cars. As always, please give a like, leave a comment, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Goodbye, everyone. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.